and I'm a B2B copywriter and marketing strategist who helps small businesses and entrepreneurs connect with and delight their ideal audience. So, on Turn Your Messaging into Magic, we talk about some of the myths, things that are going on in marketing, challenges that people message me that they're having, and how to build a strategy. We are also, in the next couple of weeks, going to start having guests on 1 to 2 times during the week. This is a 30-minute show Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays live. So I'll be inviting some marketers that I know in to talk about what's going on in the industry, what they do, some of the biggest myths that they see, and we'll have some really cool conversations. So I am really excited to start inviting people in. I just got all my workflows done in Dipsado, so it should be smooth sailing from here on out. So what are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about more myths. We're also going to be talking about, some of the things that I've seen over the last couple of weeks, just since the start of the year, with how people are reaching out and attempting to connect. And the way people are reaching out online has changed, I think, a lot in the last 23 months. Yes, we're in 23 months of this, in case you hadn't done the math before. So I think what I want to start with is, the myth that cold pitching is this challenging thing that's out of reach. I also want to challenge the myth that cold pitching is spam, because while it can be, when done wrong, it can also be done really well. I think the key is to reach out to people with an offer that they're interested in. And I think, the other side of it is to follow up, but to do so in a way that feels authentic to you and feels as though you're really helping. And you're the only one who can say, yes, I think this is a really strong way. No, this is probably not the best way to do outreach, when you see different people's styles. And the thing is, it has to be authentic to you. It has to be authentic to your audience, and it has to be authentic to your offer. So there's, if it's like a 3-way Venn diagram, it's like authentic to me, then there's a little thing that's authentic to my audience, which is totally cool. But if the offer's not right, then you've got to nail that as well. So that's where the beauty of the cold pitch comes in. But you have to find a way to do it at scale, right? Because there's a lot of follow-up that goes into it. And we all get busy. We lose track of our emails. We lose track of what's been sent. We lose track of what hasn't been sent. And then we have to go in and either find a way. So that ends up being either extremely difficult to stay on top of, or things fall off the radar even if we want to, or are doing a good job on most of it. And on the flip side, we get distracted. There's other things that are more important at the time. So how do you reach out to connect when networking events are getting canceled left and right? There's a really soft DM that you can do, especially if you're on social media. Hey, saw that something extremely personal about you, about this person. And when I say extremely personal, about their business, not about them, because that gets stalkerish. But I just had a cold pitch the other day that was extremely good. He really did his due diligence, dug in, gave me a tip for my website, which, is really interesting to see because I am a website copywriter. So it's always interesting to get someone else's perspective. And he said, your website's amazing, which I was like, thank you, I did it myself. But there's a disconnect between your website and what's on your LinkedIn. And I was like, all right, well, that's good to know. And so because of that, I was like, hey, thanks for sending me this little video. It's a Loom. If you guys aren't familiar with Loom, it's essential to my tech stack. And I'll explain more about that in either later today or in a future episode. And I said, hey, thanks for this. I've already taken it to heart, put it into action. And he's like, no problem. Hey, would you be open to hopping on a call just to get to know you? And I think that's the clincher. Yeah, I mean, they're selling a product, and he was upfront about that. He's like, we do sell a product. I'm not trying to sell you on it. But, in the spirit of learning about what we both do, we can then decide if it's something that we want to have a more detailed call on. And I was like, well, that's a really cool thing. So that's like, not to get into greater detail, but that's a really good approach, especially when you have a high ticket offer. And his offer was extremely high ticket. And I said, candidly, that's not in my budget at this point in time, but let's keep the conversation going and, check in a few months because I am in the middle of a high ticket mastermind right now. And I want to, um, I'm not quite sure what's next, and I'm still figuring that out. So maybe this, maybe not. And he said, all right. And so it's a really good conversation. We both walked away feeling extremely good. And it all came from a cold pitch. But what happens if you're not pitching a high ticket offer? What happens if you are pitching something that's somewhere in the neighborhood of, $37 to, let's even say $800, because that's not a huge offer for a lot of people, depending on the value that we pump it up with. Like $800 for a brand new car is great. $800 for a single piece of paper that's lined on both sides, maybe not so much. So it's all about the value and how you can like hook people with an angle. And so I've done lots and lots of pitching for PR over the years. And I think, I mean, I guess in a way those are cold pitches as well, but recipients tend to expect them if they're bloggers, if they're journalists, if they're some sort of writer that is like, hey, this is part of being in the public domain. This is what I do. So it's all about finding something that's going to make them want to open your email. And so how do you do that? You kind of future pace them by promising something, and it's a big promise, but then you have to be able to back it up in the writing. And maybe it's something as simple as a subject line like quick question. Hey, a question about your business. And especially if you can talk about this. Hey, I have this piece of feedback that you might find interesting. And on and on and on and on. So, I think it's interesting to see how that all comes together. So with that said, cold pitching is not necessarily disingenuous. If someone is following up, it might actually be them, or it's not necessarily a bot. And I think it's worthwhile to say, let me look at this. Let me see what you have to say. And then if they're not interested, they say, hey, no, thanks. Not interested in moving forward. And you say, all right, no problem. And it's almost nice to have a no is better than a maybe. And that's the truth in all things. Like, I'd rather get someone to say, you know what, not at this time, check back in X months, or, no, I really don't want this ever, because then I have a definitive action. I can say, oh, this either isn't hitting, and maybe it's the offer, maybe it's timing, because it's not always about you. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So I want to, talk about a couple of other things. I'm scrolling through on this other screen for some of the other misconceptions that people had. And interestingly enough, that's going to be a key part of the show moving forward. When I have guests on, we are going to be talking about the biggest myths that they're busting in their field. One big one is that email is dead. And I can tell you that it's not. Email is the single best tool in your arsenal because it's still people inviting you into their lives. Even if your open rate isn't 70%, even if your name is not Iman Ismail, even if your name is not Chris Orzakowski, even if it's not Daniel Thrussell, Laura Belgray, all these people who I look up to, whose emails I enjoy getting and I look forward to getting, who have open rates that are insane. And they've got incredible strategies. Even if you're not one of them, you don't have to email people every day. In fact, although that's like one of the best ways to build sales, because people see your name and all of a sudden they're like, this person, yeah, I know them. Just like on social media, right? But email is the furthest thing from dead. So one of the strategies that I talk about a lot is building your email list, because that is the single best way to get in touch with people. Once you have people's emails, you can educate them a little bit about your offerings, trends that you're seeing in the industry, people that they should follow. And if you're a sharer and a follower, you attract people who are like, wow, this person has really good information. But it's not easy. And that's the hard truth. Like, It can be challenging to constantly find something to write about. It can be challenging to be always looking for new things. It can be challenging to stick to your schedule when all these other things come up. So, if you can take a little bit of strategy to it and say, okay, if you look at a calendar, start with 30 days, and if you can go out to 90, that's better because you can see how it all builds together. But look at a calendar and say, this is what I am looking to do. How can I make this happen? Right? Okay. Pretty straightforward, right? Here's my goal. What do I need to do to get to this goal by this date? Oh, this is backwards. So this is my goal right here. What do I need to do to get to this goal? To this date? Left to right, screen mirroring. It's challenging. And then you can say, okay, well, these are the kind of emails I need to write. These are the kinds of stories that I need to be telling. These are the kinds of things that people probably believe that we can start busting. And you can start offering another viewpoint. And who does this really extremely well is Ash Chow. I highly recommend her, and I'm hoping that she'll join us on the show one of these days because she's got a really unique aspect and show. But I'm extremely excited to be bringing to you guests. The first two are booked, February 9th and 10th, and we may have someone hopping on to join me before that. I have a couple other announcements that are coming up. But in the meantime, if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. If you have any myths that you're struggling to bust, or you're like, how can I address this in my copy? How can I address this about what I do on sales conversations? And what other places can I be showing up with this message? And my hair is still crazy. That's what I get, honestly, for thinking I had time to hop on the bike and still get to the show on time. And I did, but then I had to dunk my head under the water and, all the things. So anyway, long story short, thank you for joining me here today. I am excited to continue this series, and I'm excited to continue to get to know you and deliver some really interesting topics. I will chat with you soon.